Hola a todos. Hoy te presentaremos una técnica innovadora que hará que aprender inglés sea más sencillo y efectivo. No te lo pierdas, y si te gusta el contenido, asegúrate de suscribirte, darle like y dejarnos un comentario. Vamos a por ello.
The Duck and the Proud Swan. Imagine a very quiet lake, where the water shines in the morning sun. It is a beautiful place, surrounded by tall trees and flowers that seem to smile. Here lives a small, friendly duck. It is a duck like any other, with soft feathers and feet that splash joyfully in the water. In this lake, too, lives a swan. But this swan is not like the duck. No. This swan has a long, elegant neck, snow-white feathers and a look that always seems proud. He walks as if the whole lake were his. He feels special, very special. Every morning, the duck swims happily around the lake, enjoying the sun and the freshness of the water. He doesn't care how he looks, or what others think. He is just happy being himself. The swan, on the other hand, spends his days looking at his reflection in the water. He looks at himself and thinks, I am the most beautiful of all. There is no one like me. One day, the swan sees the duck splashing nearby and approaches with an arrogant smile. Duck, he says in his soft but firm voice, wouldn't you like to be like me? Look at my feathers, my grace, my beauty. You're just a plain, ordinary duck. The duck, still splashing, looks at the swan with a smile. Maybe, he says, but I'm happy just the way I am. I love to swim and play in the water. I don't need to be anything else to enjoy my life. The swan, surprised by the duck's response, frowns. But, duck, he insists, you don't understand. Being beautiful is the most important thing. Everyone admires me for my beauty. The duck swims on, unconcerned by the swan's words. Maybe for you, that's the most important thing. But for me, being happy is what counts. And so, day after day, the swan continues to look at his reflection, while the duck continues to enjoy the lake. They both live in the same place, but they see life in very different ways. What the swan doesn't know is that, deep in the lake, there is a secret that will change everything. One day, something very special will happen. Something that will make the swan see the world in a different light. But that is a story yet to be told. What do you think will happen? Will the swan learn something from the duck? Or will the duck discover something new about itself? The swan went about its daily routine, admiring its reflection in the water and feeling proud of its beauty. Meanwhile, the duck continued to enjoy its simple life, swimming and splashing happily in the lake. One day, a dark storm began to form on the horizon. Clouds gathered and the wind blew hard, causing the lake to become choppy. Birds living near the water began to seek shelter, and the swan, seeing its image in the water distorted by the waves, felt an uneasiness it had never experienced before. The duck, noticing the approach of the storm, decided to find a safe place. It knew that the reeds on the shore offered protection from the wind and rain. It headed there, certain that it would be safe. The swan, however, did not want to leave his beloved reflection, even though the water was moving violently. I am the most beautiful, he thought, and I must stay close to my reflection. How could others admire my beauty if I hide myself? The raindrops began to fall, first gently, then harder. The lake, once so serene, became a whirlpool of waves and currents. The swan struggled to stay close to the surface, but the wind and rain pushed him farther and farther away. The duck, from his shelter in the reeds, watched the swan with concern. Although the swan had always been haughty and aloof, the duck knew that he could not leave him alone in the middle of the storm. So, without a second thought, he left his shelter and swam with all his might to where the swan was struggling to stay afloat. "Swan," the duck shouted above the roar of the wind. "Follow me. I know a safe place." The swan, exhausted and frightened, looked at the duck in bewilderment. He had never considered that he might need help, let alone from a simple duck. But the storm was relentless, and the swan realized that if he did not accept help, he could be swept away by the currents. Finally, he nodded weakly, and with the duck's guidance, he swam toward the reeds. There they took shelter together as the storm raged across the lake. When the storm passed and the lake calmed again, the swan and the duck emerged from their shelter. The swan, still shaken by the experience, looked at the duck with gratitude. For the first time, he realized that beauty is not always the most important thing. The duck's humility, kindness, and wisdom had saved his life. "Thank you, duck," said the swan, in a softer, less arrogant voice. "Today I learned something I had never understood before." The duck smiled. "You don't need to thank me, swan. We all need help sometimes. And remember, it's not appearance that defines our worth, but what we carry in our hearts." And so, the swan and the duck became inseparable friends. The swan learned to see beyond his reflection, and the duck found new joy in sharing his life with an unexpected friend. But, even though the story seems to have found an end, the lake still holds secrets. Because, in its depths, lies a mystery even bigger than any storm. What will the swan and the duck discover next? Days passed, and the swan and the duck continued to enjoy the lake together. Although their lives were very different, they now understood each other better, and that made them feel closer. The swan no longer spent so much time looking at his reflection. Instead, he enjoyed the simple joys the duck showed him, such as chasing insects across the surface of the water or flying in the gentle evening breezes. One morning, as they swam together, the duck noticed something unusual. In the center of the lake, where the water was deepest, a soft light shone, as if the sun was reflecting off something beneath the surface. "Swan, do you see that?" asked the duck, pointing to the light. The swan, intrigued, nodded. "Yes, it's strange. I've never seen it before. What do you think it is?" The duck, ever curious, suggested they investigate. "It could be hidden treasure," he said excitedly. "Or maybe a new friend." They both approached the glow cautiously. As they came closer, the light became brighter, but also softer, like a warm embrace. Suddenly, they realized it was no ordinary light. It was some kind of energy emanating from the bottom of the lake, creating bubbles that slowly rose to the surface. The swan, though still a little fearful, felt a strange attraction to the light. "There's something down there," he murmured. "Something calling to us." The duck, always keen to explore, dove in without hesitation. The swan followed, flapping its large wings to propel itself downward. As they descended, they noticed the water around them becoming clearer, almost as if they were entering another world. Bubbles surrounded them, caressing their feathers and filling them with a sense of peace. At the bottom of the lake, they found something amazing, a glowing stone, the size of an egg, emanating a golden light. It seemed alive, pulsing with each beat of their hearts. The swan and the duck looked at each other, surprised. "What do you think it is?" asked the swan, marveling at the stone's beauty. The duck, who had always been more intuitive, replied with a smile. "I think it's a gift. Something the lake offers us. But I'm not sure why." As they gazed at the stone, they began to hear a soft voice, like a whisper coming from deep within their minds. The voice spoke to them in a tone that was both warm and mysterious. "You have found the heart of the lake," the voice said. "It is a source of wisdom and power, but only those with pure hearts can discover its true purpose." The swan, who now understood the value of humility and kindness, felt that the stone was more than just an object. It was a symbol of the connection between them, between the lake and the life that flourished around it. "What should we do with it?" he asked, feeling a mixture of respect and responsibility. "The heart of the lake has the power to change whatever you touch," the voice replied. "It can make nature grow, heal wounds, or even grant wishes. But remember, its true power lies in balance, in harmony with the world." The duck and the swan then understood that they had something very special in their hands. But they also knew that they should not use it lightly. The stone was not just a gift, it was proof of their friendship, of what they had learned together. They slowly rose to the surface, carrying the stone with them. Once out of the water, they held it between them, feeling its warmth. "What shall we do with this?" asked the duck, looking at the swan. "Let's use it to make the lake an even more beautiful place," replied the swan, with a smile. "And let's promise to always take care of this place, and those who live here." So, the swan and the duck began a new adventure, using the heart of the lake to bring more life, joy, and peace to their home. And while the story seems to have reached a climax, the real journey was only just beginning. Because in every corner of the lake, and beyond, even greater secrets lay hidden, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to look.
Y con eso terminamos. Si te gustó este vídeo, asegúrate de suscribirte al canal. Además, te invitamos a ver el siguiente vídeo que te dejamos por aquí, para seguir mejorando tu nivel de inglés a base de práctica y repetición. Nos vemos allí.